everyone. Welcome to today's Public Librarians Chat. Today we are going to be talking about Alaska Mail Services. We have with us today Kate Enge. She is the Interlibrary Loan Administrator and Alaska Mail Services Coordinator. Kate has been working at the Juneau Public Library since May 2007. So I'm going to switch her this and let her start her presentation.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Alaska Mail Services because I think it's a very great program that we are able to provide states, and I hope that you will enjoy learning a little bit about it. So to start off, today I'm going to be giving a quick introduction about Alaska Mail Services. It's a program that has been around for a pretty long time, and not a lot of people are aware of it, so I'm hoping to tell you guys about it and get the word out so that more people are aware of the service that is available. And part of that will be to tell who can qualify, because there's some, not misinformation, but it can be kind of confusing about who can actually sign up for this service and what's available. There's lots of items available from the Juneau Public Library, so I touch a little bit on that, and so then want to finish up why I think this service is important and tell you guys a little bit about one of our mail service patrons, Tara, who's been a long-time patron, and her story is very interesting and kind of showcases why this program is so great. So, what is Alaska Mail Services? Well, it's pretty much a books by mail program. If you can see by picture, that is some returning mail that we have received from patrons. I'm pretty sure our post office guy really likes us because we are constantly moving large bags of books back and forth. And the program was started many years ago. I think initially it was run through the Alaska State Library, and it was providing library services to patrons who don't have access to a library on their own. And for the long time after that, it was offered through the Fairbanks Public Library, did all the up north patrons, and Juneau Public Library took care of all of the patrons in Southeast Alaska. And then starting in July 2014, Juneau Public Library took care of the whole state. So we service the entire state of Alaska. And with the help of the state library is the one who provides us a grant that pays for 4 mail services employees. We have 1 full-time employee, 2 3/4-time employees, and 1 quarter-time employee. They also provide money for books, so we can buy those paperback books, have a paperback mail services collection available at the Juneau Public Library, any office supplies that we might need, and postage, which is a very big part of our budget, is postage money. And basically what we do is we have a file drawer of patrons, and we each have a file, and every 6 to 8 weeks when they come up in a rotation, we put together a book shipment of about 20 items, give or take, and we mail them off, and it should be enough where if they have a book shipment and are finishing up reading it and sending it back, and we send one to them, that there will be a little bit of overlap so they don't go too long without books and things to read. So, the people who can qualify for this service are individuals and families who live in Alaska, who live in communities who either don't have a library at all, or who have a library, but the library doesn't get a library from scratch to the state of Alaska. And it just can be kind of confusing because we've had instances of some people whose library had offered services that that don't offer services that they would like, and we do, and they would like to get a library card, and we just can't. We don't have the ability or the funding to provide services for the whole entire state, so we have to kind of keep it selected to people who can't get services on their own. And I have an application here. So every patron, and we can either mail them this application, email or snail mail, or they can apply on the web. And we really just need some information about them, so we can get where they live, if they have internet access, how reliable is their mail. Some people have mail all year round. Some people, because of weather, are kind of isolated for chunks of time, like in the winter, because there's no way for mail to get to them because of where they live. If they want, what kind of preference for things they would like to read, fiction, nonfiction, if there's any kids who try to provide reading materials for them, if they're in a homeschool situation or just want to supplement what they're learning at school. And I think the thing at the bottom is that they would like to have any media. Some people like to have DVDs and music CDs. Some people really like audiobooks. A couple patrons have asked us not to send any kind of media to them just because the post office and mail delivery is so rough on their shipments that items have gotten broken when it's delivered. I think there was one patron who told us how all their mail was just kind of dropped out of the mail plane, and it just pretty much broke all the DVDs that they had. So they just asked us to don't send anymore because they didn't want to have to pay for replacement costs or have a DVD that then they can't watch because it was broken and shipped. And there's no cost to sign up because it's just like a library card through any public library. We pay to ship items to them, but we require patrons to ship the items back. And depending on how big the shipment is, as you saw those big book bags, it could be anywhere from maybe $6 to $7 upwards to $12 to $13, depending on how big the shipment is, how many items are in the bag. If they want Game of Thrones and hardcover, that's going to weigh a little bit more than the paperback version. So it's really dependent on what we send people. And we've worked with patrons. Some patrons only want things in the books in the summer because they're working, or maybe just in the winter because they have no access to maybe something to keep them entertained. So we're willing to work with patrons and make sure that they get the kind of access that will not hinder their lifestyle, but kind of work with their lifestyle, because we want to be an addition, not a burden. So, and the full-time employee Max made a map with the help of the state library earlier this year, I think in January, and here's a picture of what he came up with, and you can see pretty much how spread out all our patrons are. We used to be just concentrated in the southeast, and now we're through the entire bulk of the state. I think they did, based off the geographic location, is why the dots are different colors. I think he came up all with red ones, and then it looks kind of not bad, but it looks kind of alarming because there's always dots all over the state. So he came up with a colored version so you can kind of see where everybody is located. Some people are pretty close to Juneau. Some people are pretty close to population centers. I had to crop the map, and you can see down there at the very, very bottom, there's this little lone dot that's pretty far away from everything, but we managed to provide services to just about everybody. And all of our mail services patrons are able to access services that the Juneau Public Library provides. So we have, with help of the state library, we bought a paperback book collection. Paperbacks are generally less expensive, take up less space. They're not as heavy. If one gets damaged, it's kind of less cost to replace than a hardback. But anybody who has a mail services card, they have access to pretty much anything that we provide. And here on our flyer, we're going to send these out to communities so you can kind of get an idea. We want to dispel the notion that it's just a bag of books, because we want to provide more, we want to show people about how much more they can get with this library card, including any of our hardbacks, bestsellers, audiobooks. We generally, if it's available, we can send it in our library, we can send it out. They also, with their library card number, have access to any of our databases that the library subscribes to, which most popular is the Alaska Digital Library. I have to keep remembering that new name and keep calling it Listen Alaska. We have some patrons who all they want is just a library card so they can access Listen Alaska. They don't want any books mailed to them. They don't need any extra help. They just want to be able to have access to something. And now it's kind of amazing just how far some patrons have internet access. It used to be, I remember somebody had internet access through their job. They worked at the Forest Service, and it took them all day to download, they had dial-up, it took them all day to download an audiobook. And so they were like, the service is nice, but I really just prefer audiobooks because it takes so long to get anything downloaded. And now their internet speed is a lot faster, and so it's more and more common for people to email us or just get items to Listen Alaska, and they really like that service. And now, because everybody knows pretty much, or most people know, we're part of this Joint Library Consortium, and we didn't want to kind of hoard, not the right, kind of suck up other libraries' items. And so the mail services patrons, we have had permission from the University of Alaska Southeast, and Anchorage is the one that we asked, just say if it's okay if some of their items can be put on hold and transferred to mail services patrons, with the idea is we full aware, Davis Library is full aware that the items are going to be checked out for two months, a longer checkout period, because it takes so long for things to move back and forth. I think other items we've requested on a more case-by-case basis. So if it's something that only Westella has, or only maybe UAA, that too, we'll ask individually, and they can have so they can say yes or no, because we don't want to surprise and all of a sudden have the library be like, why did that one book disappear for 3 months? And be like, oh, right, because we just took it really without asking. And the last thing our patrons can do, patrons can ask questions, kind of not as popular as now as it used to be. I think maybe now that our patrons have access to the internet, they're probably able to do their own research by themselves other than asking us. But we still can answer questions. There's a couple people who do research or just have really interesting, unique interests, and so they ask us for more information, like journal articles or magazine articles on specific topics, and then we look it up and see if we can find it for them. Kind of a smaller close-up of everything that we provided that I had cropped and put in. And the last thing would be why is the service important? And we feel it's important because we feel that library services are important to anybody in the state of Alaska, or really anywhere, regardless of where they live. So just because you happen to, your lifestyle is living kind of in the woods, or that's where you want to live, or you're hunting or trapping, or whatever the reason is, you shouldn't be limited in your library services just because there's not a library close to you. And providing library services and making sure our patrons have entertainment and ability to keep learning throughout their lives is part of our mission statement. We're really happy that we get to provide this service for everybody in the state. And kind of one of our favorite patrons because she kind of makes her job interesting, is we have Tara. And Tara, I gave the link. You can see that's her blog. She, up until a year ago, she did not have internet access, but she finally got internet access. She lives in Myers Chuck in Southeast Alaska, and so she's now been writing a blog, and she updates it about once or twice a week. And it's really interesting because, I think living in Juneau, I think I'm pretty rural, but kind of some of the things that she's gone through, because she was born and raised there and kind of still lives there, is kind of highlights why the service is so important. And Tara has been, I think a patron since the early 90s. She was kind of recommended when she was in high school. She lives in Myers Chuck, which I think currently the population is about 12. I think it's like her family and like her parents and like her, maybe like a couple other people. And she sends us cards, and I'm really disappointed because she sent us the best cards with like letters on what's going on and what she wants. And there was one she sent us last year that had Bart Simpson writing on the chalkboard, like this is not the death of snail mail or something, over and over again. It's kind of like, if she uses snail mail, it's still really important to her. The rest of us might be texting and using email, but for her, like the physical mail is still a lifeline. And she's described to us how she gets her books, and I believe they go from us at the Juneau Public Library to the post office, and then go from Juneau to Ketchikan, where they're sorted and placed on a mail plane, and then from the mail plane flies to a small village that's close to where she is, but not like close enough to walk, because they have to get a skiff, and they take a skiff from Myers Chuck to this village to get the mail and to get the books and anything else, and they come back, and it's dependent on weather, it's dependent on the tide, it's dependent on like a lot of different factors. There was a couple times when the weather was so bad they couldn't get the mail at all by skiff, so they just couldn't travel. So one of the family members like hiked from Myers Chuck to the village to get the mail, but not the books, because the books they would have had been carried back like in the dark over bluffs and rocks and wet, and it's like not it's okay to carry the mail, but not this like 15-pound bag of books. So she had to wait, and she would send us a letter and be like, can you please renew everything? Because I just got them, and we usually, we could accommodate our patrons, so we were more than happy to renew everything that she gets. And she was one of the teachers because she's a writer, and that really imperative to read her blog. She's really great in describing what she does and what she writes, and it's really interesting to read her stuff. But since she didn't have internet until like fairly recently, she had to write us a letter and be like, this is what I'm currently researching. We would then take the letter, do all this research, try to find what she needed, include it in her book bag, or sometimes send it separately, so then she would have all these copies of articles and books and things being mailed to her, and then we'll wait, then we'll get another letter being like, oh, that was great, now I'm interested in this other topic, can you please send me, I need pictures of Arizona, please send me pictures of Arizona, and so then we will have to go and find that, and that always made everybody's job a little bit more fun, because we always liked finding things out for our patrons, and kind of after a while we get to know them and know what they like and what they don't like, and so we're able to kind of tailor the service to their needs and their expectations. And so that's it. This is the contact information for Alaska Mail Services. You can go find us at the Juneau Public Library website, but probably the easiest is this link, or just to call us, or send us an email. There should be somebody in the office between Monday and Friday, so we're usually really fast at responding to email, and there's usually somebody there to answer the phone and answer any questions. I don't believe, okay, so sorry, this is my first webinar, if you guys haven't noticed. Clara asked if there's a list somewhere of the areas that mail services serves, because they get calls from people and it'd be helpful to know if their community does not qualify. And I want to say, currently on our website, that we don't have a list of the areas that we serve or that do or do not qualify. We're currently upgrading our website. It's kind of like a total city and borough Juneau are upgrading all the websites. So we are updating our mail services part and making everything more current and clearer. And so that is something that we can definitely put on the website, because I think that will be helpful for a lot of people. So thank you, Claire.
Also have people refer them to you.
Oh, yeah. Like Julie mentioned, and if you have questions or you're not sure, you could just have them call either the mail services number or the main Juneau Public Library number. That's 907-586-5249, and they can call us there too, and we can also talk to them and ask questions too, as well. Jason has a question about if there's a flyer that he can send out to patrons in a trifold and trifold format, and we don't have so we don't have a trifold flyer, because like what we just came up with, like what I showed you, the full page one, and I'm going to also show you guys, we came up with a bookmark that we are sending to our patrons to then pass on to their friends and family or anybody in the community who might be interested. And that's a front and back. There's the front. On the back it lists more of our services, and so that's something that I can send a bunch up to you, Jason, if you want to hand those out. If there's anything else, you can give me a call and we can work on some other information that we can give you that you can send out. That would be helpful. If you think that, I should also say, if you think that like a trifold format would be better to put information on, we would really like that suggestion, because we're just kind of coming up with what we think people might want, but we're not 100% sure what would be beneficial for out in the rural areas. So if there's some other material that you would think they would like, we would love to hear about it, because we want to be able to get people interested.
Just a voice check. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, when listening to this, because we occasionally do have people that I send material out to, and I was just thinking if potentially the library up here starts offering this service, and of course, I definitely need to talk to David Onley, my director, about this. But I just imagine people wondering, and David asking as well, if we're offering this service, why are we having the books come all the way from Juneau when we could just potentially just be sending them out ourselves? And I know you mentioned earlier about sharing the catalog as far as people can look at certain catalogs to get their material from. And I don't know, I'm just trying to think of how, I mean, in some cases I guess we already do this, but for say, when you get patrons out in the bush that are requesting material from, say, Anchorage, is Anchorage then mailing that material out, or does Anchorage then mail it to Juneau, and then Juneau collects all the material, then bags it up, and mails it out to the villages?
Yeah, so Anchorage will be mailing it to Juneau, and then we collect everything in a shipment and mail it out to the villages. And then it comes back to us in Juneau and goes to Anchorage.
Oh,
I think.
Okay.
So I think, I'm not quite sure exactly like what went on in 2014 and why. I think we were asked if we would be able to service the whole state, and we said yes, because we already had the mail services. We were already kind of had something, the program in place, and we were servicing Southeast Alaska. I'm not sure if in the future we need to have a conversation where maybe it would be better if somebody else would want to take the rural part again. Because right now we are, like you're right, it is kind of silly to have stuff going to Juneau and then going back up and being mailed back and forth, and it takes longer. And I'm not sure why, if there was anybody else who was asked about if they wanted to host like the rural part of, like the more up north part of mail services, and then we were the ones who just got it or not, because I wasn't part of any of those discussions. But I'm not sure, and I'm willing that if there's some better way to serve everybody in the state that may not be like us, like Juneau, doing the far north, then I'm willing to work with that, because I think that would also be a good thing too. And this service is already would be. Sorry, I'm talking off the top of my head. So now I'm going off script, and now I'm not quite sure when my brain is going faster than my mouth, I think. There's a better way that we could do this. We can make this program better. If there's some way we could do that, and that would be, I'm willing to work on that. And I hope that answers your question, Jason.
It certainly seems like a very interesting and needed service for people to kind of serve the ILL function for people who really don't have a library to go to, and trained individuals that can fulfill that function. And so it's one of the reasons I'm attending this, because I'm like, oh, well, I kind of do that. All right, it's pretty neat. I'd love to get a little bit more information about it, just have a little chat with David, just to see what his thoughts are on the matter and what he wants. What his thoughts are on the matter. But all right. Well, thanks. I'm going to stop talking now, I suppose.
Thank you, Jason. Does anybody else have any questions? All right, thanks everybody. Talk to you later. Have a great weekend. Bye.